Hey there, everyone. Paul and Karen here for another week of Good to Great. And I think we're in week 7? Yeah. And as I read this chapter, and I even said to Karen, I read it before she did, and as I was sitting and reading it the one day, I told Karen, I said, this is going to be a challenge. It challenged me. Mm-hmm. If you're not challenged, I can't imagine that you really paid attention to what we were reading in the midst of it, because wow.
Well, when you start a chapter with a story of a wife taking a beating to, within inches of her life so that her husband wouldn't get beat, I mean, that's
But it was
a
their
sacrifice.
response about it.
Right.
They were blessed with the opportunity
Right.
to be sacrificed
Yeah.
for Christ. And that's a challenge, that there's people still doing that in this world and going through that, but with that attitude of being willing to. I mean, like some of those stories of, I watch sometimes soldier stories, mm-hmm. and I think of some of their stories of how they were willing to dive on the hand grenade and give up their lives, and and this chapter almost made me feel like, well, that should be the church's attitude, that we should have that desire of sacrifice, of giving up ourselves for the sake of others. And what a powerful story! What are powerful stories in there, and the challenges of Scripture that they put in there too, Karen.
Right.
So
how often we just chase comfort or what we want, and instead of recognizing what God wants, and that may mean giving up what we want.
Yeah. So. And to fully believe that sacrifice, that it will bless us. Not that it's going to hurt us, but that if we do sacrifice with the right attitude, it blesses us. Mm-hmm. Well, I can think of a story, Karen. Yeah. I know you and I went on some different types of mission trips in the past mm-hmm. together, and the one time I went on one without you, and what a powerful trip it was. We got down there, we were working with the Indians down in McCall, South Carolina, the PD Indians, and it was a team of a bunch of teenagers and adults, probably around 25 to 30 of us. And we had already spent most of our money. It was like Wednesday this week, and we spent most of our money, did a lot of work already. But all of a sudden, we found out about this one family. Their last name, it was the Hunt family. And I still remember it. All of a sudden, we found out that the parents, because of the living conditions, were separated from their kids, their young kids. And they wanted to get back together, but they couldn't as long as they were living where they were. But all of a sudden, they had a chance for this house. And if they got the house fixed up enough, could get moved into it, they could get their kids back and to get brought back together. And so all of a sudden we were faced with this dilemma. We'd already used up most of our funds, and we didn't have much left. We didn't have much time left, and there was a lot to do. A lot of work, a lot of work to do. And so we had a meeting together that evening with just like Thursday and Friday left to work, and so we met together with the whole team, and we took an offering. And the amount of money that we raised in that offering was it dumbfounded us leaders.
The teenagers spending money.
The teenagers spending money. What we found out later was that these teenagers, when they saw this possibility in front of them, they gave it all. It was the money that they were supposed to use for either souvenirs or paying for their meals. We had a 15-hour ride home at the end of the week, and they gave up all their money. They're spending money to be able to buy food for themselves, lunches on the way home, and they said, we eventually will get food when we get home, but these people have nothing. And so they just gave it all. It just blew us away. And so it wasn't just a sacrifice of the money, but for the next 2 days, we had some fun things planned. We gave all our fun things. Those teenagers gave it up. And we worked from morning until night. We were exhausted at nighttime. We rewired the house, replumbed the house. But at the end of the week, it was so cool that the state agent lady that was in charge of their situation, she saw everything that we had done and said, okay, they get their family back. And it was such a cool feeling of, we sacrificed a lot that week, but ultimately, did we really? Because we were coming home and going back to our houses and having good meals and things, but those teenagers, just to see their willingness, they gave it all. Right. It was such a cool moment. I remember I'm getting a little teared up. Just think about it, remembering Stephen Gallagher, my buddy, and I, we were leading that team, and we bawled like babies. We just did. We bawled like babies in that truck as we just talked about what those teenagers had done. It just meant so much to us. It really did. It was so cool. Mm-hmm. The idea of sacrificing, of giving up it all, or at least giving up a lot. Mm-hmm. it's just powerful.
Yeah.
Sacrifice is huge.
Yeah.
To think about what does that mean for us here in 2019 with our life groups. Karen, what do you think? What does it mean for us as life group leaders?
Right. Right. Well, we were talking a little bit about the fact that I think sacrifice, just like anything with faith, is one of those muscles that we can develop. And so the more we exercise it, I don't want to say the easier it is to sacrifice, because I'm not sure that it is or should be easy to sacrifice.
It's sacrifice. It's a word. Yeah.
It's going to be hard, but the more we do it, the more muscle we develop, and then we're better able to do it in the future. And so
for the right reasons.
Sure. And so, I've been thinking about this idea that, not every sacrifice is huge.
Right.
Sometimes sacrifices are small. And I think that we as life group leaders can really start taking on what are those small sacrifices that we can do? What are the small ways that we can give up in order to better our group? So maybe it's the sacrifice of waking up 15 minutes earlier to pray for your group every morning. For me, that is a sacrifice. I like my sleep and I don't want to get up earlier. So
I don't know if that's possible. Is that possible for you? That's a sacrifice.
It's a true sacrifice. So, maybe it's the sacrifice of sleep so that we can be prayerful. Maybe it's the sacrifice of some other activity or just television time so that we can be better prepared as leaders. Some of us kind of fly by the seat of our pants or throw our group meetings together at the last minute. And so for you, maybe sacrifice is sacrificing something you like to do or your downtime a little bit so that you can plan a meeting, prepare for a meeting, and run your life group meetings a little better. That would be a small sacrifice.
Maybe it's serving together. We're sitting in the nursery, the baby room at New Life, and I know that some people sacrifice to be able to come in here and care for kids or the other nurseries or kids on.
And that's something a life group leader could lead their group in. Hey, once a month, what if our life group all attend first service together, and then we all serve in the nursery second service? Holy cow, that would be a huge sacrifice. That would overwhelm Elena and Darcy. I don't know what they would do if a life group said, even once a month, we're committed to being in the nursery once a month this year.
Yeah, taking it over.
But that's a sacrifice. It is, because it's our comfort. It's what we want to do or don't want to do. That's a sacrifice.
Like you said, it's building your muscles to be able to do something more.
I think also another idea is just the sacrifice of our time for the people in our life group.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's more than just coming together on our weekly meeting. Maybe someone in your group is really struggling, and so sacrificing some of your time to get together with them and hang out, or to get together and just go to coffee, or to listen, to talk, to text, whatever. It can be a sacrifice of our time.
Well, didn't you hear a story about someone who just did that recently?
I actually did, yeah. There was a life group member who was having some health issues and needed to get to Denver for an appointment, but was having trouble because of just not having a good car that she could drive down there. And so her life group leader actually said, you know what, I will take my time in my vehicle and I will drive you down there for this appointment, knowing full well that it was going to be, a full day's trip. They were going to spend the night and then come back the next day. Well, once they got down there, things changed rapidly, and it started by them saying, you're already here, let's just stay tomorrow and run some more tests. Well, then the life group member actually got sick and got admitted to the hospital right there. So they were there for several days, and this life group leader stayed in Denver and didn't just leave her member at the hospital, but she went to be with her every day. She went to all of her appointments, she listened to the doctor, she helped, just gather the information that was going on.
Didn't you tell me she actually had to wash her clothes in the hotel room?
Yeah, she said, I actually went to the store and bought some more underwear, but I had to wash a shirt or something like that, or I bought a shirt and washed my underwear, whatever. But so she had to clean her clothes in the hotel room because she hadn't packed for days and days of being there. That was a sacrifice, a huge sacrifice of time, of the money involved, of all of that, of energy. And that to me is such an amazing story of sacrifice
life
as
group
a life group
sacrifice.
leader, of living together, of loving your group. And I'm sure that there are others of you who have done similar things, who have given up for someone in your life group.
Well, we know that handicap ramp that was built last year by a life group for the sake of somebody that is in their group. A lot of different things that happen in our life group. So sacrifice is huge, and that was a big one. It's a neat story that we heard. So how can we, Karen? I think of my own. I have my life groups. We have one together. What are the ways that we can do that as well? That we can pour in. So I know you and I have been talking about it. How we can individually do that. I met with one of my guys just this morning. I came up early. It was early, Karen. It was like you were still in bed when I came up to the church to meet with this guy before he went off to work.
Right.
And that's something that we can do. That we can give up that extra time, that energy to sacrifice, to give it up for the sake of others in our group. And the cool thing was, by the time I got done meeting with him, I was just blessed. We had a great talk. He's in a struggle right now, but he's getting better. And there's hope in the midst of, as we sacrifice, hopefully we can see things moving, getting better.
And you talked too, back to your story about serving down with the PD tribe in South Carolina. Sacrifice results in joy.
It does. It does. And how many times have we seen that personally as pastors, as a pastoral family, when we see others sacrificing? There's a new ministry that was started up one of our previous congregations where they make a Thanksgiving meal for anyone in the community to come in. And it's a lot of work. But yet, Bonnie helps lead that back there. And she just raised of the joy of the excitement. It's a lot of work on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, it's a sacrifice to give up being with your family to do that.
But the group of people that do that right now, they just share that joy. How can you learn from that? As you read that chapter, think of your own life, of how you've seen others maybe sacrifice for you. How can you, as life group leaders, live into that? How can you build your muscles? I like that analogy that you share, Karen. How can we build our muscles into being
more and more sacrificial?
And ultimately, where does our focus need to be? It needs to be the cross. No greater place. We look at what Jesus has done for us. The ultimate sacrifice that Jesus laid down his life for those of us while we were yet sinners. He died for us.
And I'll just mention quickly, because this chapter doesn't just talk about the kind of sacrifice where we willingly do it. There's also those sacrifices, it talked about there are times when God calls us to give up stuff that we really don't want to give up, right? So there are times when sacrifice is extremely demanding and extremely hard. But again, it's that just counting it all joy, knowing that in the midst of this time of trial, in this midst of the time of stripping of whatever God is taking from us, I think of that story of Isaac on the altar, and trusting that he was going to be resurrected. Trusting that, okay, God is just destroying this dream I have, but something is going to come. There will be beauty in the ashes.
Yeah, and we don't always know what that looks like. Sometimes it takes a while to fully realize that.
Yeah.
But it's called faith for a reason.
Yep.
So, hey, we're looking forward to hearing again some ways that God is moving in your lives, in your life group's lives.
And if you have one of those stories, like the one we just told about the life group leader who took her life group member to Denver, and maybe it's not you as a life group leader, maybe it's someone in your life group who sacrificed for someone else, we would love to hear those stories.
Yeah, we're always looking for stories, and sometimes it ends up in worship because it's just that good of a story. So, hey, we're praying for you in the midst of this journey of learning to be good to great.
Bye.